one was taking a road trip with my good friend Carter to visit some other friends from college. The drive was pretty far, about hours, but worth it with the both of us. We should be able to do it in one long go. He started driving first. Then about hours in, Carter took over. The plan was for me to sleep while he drove, but it generally couldn't. I don't know what it was. But I was never able to get comfortable, so by the time it was my turn to drive again, I was pretty tired, maybe even more so than I was before he took over. I was still able to keep my eyes open and pay attention to the road, but somehow I never noticed the gas tank getting really low. We were driving Carter's old Chevy, which didn't have a fancy tech to alert you when your tank is low. There was just a gas gouge I never even looked at. Wasn't until the car started sputtering that I quickly realized we had nothing in the tank. Carter quickly woke up and started searching on his phone for the nearest gas station, but not even. Seconds later, I had to pull off the highway because the car wouldn't acceleration yaw. I felt so stupid. Even worse, Carter said the closest gas station was miles up the road. We were kind of in the middle of nowhere. It was just plains around us, and there were no other cars on the road. We talked over other options for a few minutes, but ultimately, Carter decided he'd walk to the nearest gas station and bring back a canister while I stayed and just watch car. Maybe not the best plan, but it felt like a waste to call for help and have to pay bucks just for some gas when the station was still within a walkable distance, although it was AM and dark outside. Carter didn't seem bothered as left the car and started heading down the road. Within a minute, he was out of sight. I sat back and basically just thought about how stupid I was for getting us in this situation. But just a couple minutes later, I saw headlights coming down the road from up ahead. They came down and passed by, but they were going much slower than they should have been. I think the speed limit was on and they passed by going maybe Eerie watched in the side mirror and they didn't speed up after passing. They slowed down even more, eventually stopping and doing a 3-point turn to come back round. Honestly, I didn't want to admit I was out of gas or needed help or anything, and I didn't have to. They came back down the road and passed me even slower. This time, like maybe probably staring through the windows at me before picking up speed and heading back the way they initially come from. What was that about? I kept my eyes glued to the road for the next few minutes, waiting to see if they came back round or not. I had a pretty bad feeling about it. Maybe it was just my gut. But I started to think something could go pretty wrong soon. I got my phone out and called Carter. I just wanted to let him know and maybe to hurry up if possible. But the phone rang all the way through. He didn't pick up. That definitely made me worried. But maybe he just had his phone on silent or lost service along the road. I waited a minute, then called again. Still nothing. At this point, I definitely was being rational. But I made the decision to ditch the car and try to catch up with Carter. I think it had only been 4 minutes since he'd walked away, so if he was still walking, surely could jog and catch up in just a few minutes. I got out and made sure to lock the car, then started jogging down the side of the road. It was real quiet out there, so quiet that every time I took a break from running, I'd notice the ringing in my ears, only because there was not even the slightest sound to drown it out. I jogged for minutes. I thought I would have caught up to Carter by then, unless something made him start jogging or running for some reason. I decided to pull out my phone and call him once more, and it was just then that I heard the sound of it ringing. It was very faint in the distance somewhere off the side of the road. I looked out the nothingness past the hood of the road, and just barely I could see a light glowing in the grass. My body T and SED. Carter. He didn't respond. I couldn't see anything at all aside from the dim phone screen glowing. I took a few steps off the road and into the grass, calling out again. Finally, I got a response. I could faintly hear Carter's voice coming from somewhere near where the phone was, but I couldn't tell what he was saying. I hurried closer and Carter yelled again. And this time I could hear he was telling me to get down. I still couldn't even see him yet, but I did what he said, ducking in the grass, and that's when I looked back and saw a car coming down the road. I immediately knew it was the same one I'd seen moving slowly just like before. They were looking for us, or Carter, I guess. They made 3 or 4 turnarounds, slowly passing Eerie and very obviously searching for us. Once it seemed like they finally left, we got up and booked it to the gas station. Carter explained that the guy initially pulled over and tried to get them to get in his car. He said he was extremely creepy and really didn't hide the fact that he had bad intentions after. Carter refused. The man stepped out of his car and Carter instantly took off running. I guess the guy thought he'd just continue running down the road, so he got back in his car to chase him. But Carter ran off the road, jumped in the grass, and just hid at some point. His phone flew out of his pocket, and he was just scared I get up on reveal himself, so he just stayed hidden. Anyway, we got to the gas station and were able to get help. We also told the police about the guy, describing his care and everything, but they never found him. It was very much a horrifying close encounter, and I feel really bad even still for being the reason we were put in that situation. One thing's for sure too, I'll never forget to fill up the gas tank ever again. Story to this was back Eerie almost never went on road trips back then because I rarely had time to take multiple days off just to drive, plus additional time to actually enjoy vacation. However, I was in between jobs when my family was planning a surprise birthday for my dad turning back then. Gas was way cheaper than it is now, and flying was a lot more expensive in comparison to the gas prices. So, both to save money and because I didn't have a job at the moment, I decided to make a drive. To be safe, I made it a day road trip. So, after the first full day of driving, I pulled into the nearest motel and booked myself for the night. It wasn't the nicest place, but I didn't mind. I slept in until then, packed up and opened the door to head out, only to be startled by a man standing right in the doorway. Excuse me. I tried to get past him, but he didn't really move, so it was a bit awkward. The man looked mid-s and had heavy bags under his eyes. Just overall not kindest face. As I moved the rest of the stuff into my car, he remained creepily standing outside the motel room watching me. Good thing I wasn't staying there any longer. I checked out of the motel and headed back onto the road. This was my longest day of driving. I planned to get at least hours in. The first while went pretty good, I'd say. A lot of it was throughout towns and cities, and it wasn't until 2 hours in that they faded out and it became more rural. Long stretches of road. Once I realized towns were getting few and far between. I stopped at the next gas station to fill up. I paid and started the pump, then headed inside to get a coffee for the road. When I was heading back to my car though, I saw someone pull their car up really close to mine, like from the front. It looked like their bumper was touching the back of my car. It was a deep red old crawler. Nobody was outside of it putting gas in, and the windshield was tinted. I couldn't see anything at all through it, but knowing someone wasn't there, I couldn't shake the sense that they were watching me. I took their pump out and got back in, leaving the gas station. Almost immediately after, that car left, too, again, never having put gas in or anything, and pulled up behind me to merge onto the highway. I was hoping this was all just a coincidence, and just continued with my drive. I noticed them behind me for a while, maybe 5 or 6 cars back, but as the sun set, I couldn't really tell what cars were what. I could only see a cluster of headlights. Behind me, as it got later, fewer and fewer cars were out, and I went about for more hours without seeing that car again. I'd almost entirely forgotten about it, figuring it was never anything to begin with. I was more concerned with trying to keep myself awake now that I'd finished my coffee. The nearest main city was still hours away, and I really wanted to make it there and get Anna's hotel. Maybe even check out the city in the morning, but that was only if my eyes would stay open long enough. I thought maybe if I stopped to get another coffee. Not even for caffeine, but just for the distraction of constantly sipping on it. Maybe it'd be enough for me to power through the next hours. At the next gas station, emerged off the highway. Right away, I could see it was closed. The convenience store section. I was pretty disappointed. But I did need to top off my gas anyway. So I pulled through and started filling it up, almost right away. I saw a single pair of headlights pull off of the empty highway and begin down the exit ramp toward the gas station. This place was already creepy as is. Just a standalone dark gas station with nothing round it. Couldn't even see past the outdoor lights. So, when I recognized the car coming down as deep red crawler from the other gas station, my heart rate instantly picked up. I couldn't stop myself from theory thought of if I was being followed. I hurried to unplug the nozzle and put it back, but the car pulled in extremely fast, not even going up to the pump, but pulling right up to the city of my car by the driver door. I was just able to get in before the passenger door of their car opened. A man got out, no even hesitating to run up to my door entry to open it. It took only a split second of looking at him to recognize the guy as the same man from the motel those, and knowing I sent chills through him, I turned my car on, and when he realized he couldn't open the door, he stopped trying. I shot a glance at him as I pulled away, expecting to see anger or frustration, but what I saw was even more disturbing. He was grinning through me to hear like this was funny. Complete tipsickif. I floated back to the highway and didn't stop until I reached the city, thankfully. I'm almost % sure I wasn't followed that time. What really scares me is that the mango, out from the passenger seat of the car, so someone else was driving him and was in on whatever sick idea that guy had in mind. They followed me for over hours from the motel, and even worse. They could have been following the day before without me, ever knowing. I still find it hard to forget that road trip even a decade later. Story 3 by choice. It's just how things are when you live out in a more rural area. There are not a ton of jobs close to home, so take what you can get. The bear itself isn't anything special, but it's steady, work, and most nights are pretty unimental. The night this all happened was no different. My shift had gone by without me happening, and after closing everything up, I got in my car and started the drive home. Most of the way back is nothing but a series of winding back roads, hardly any traffic, barely any lights, barely any cars, barely anything. Honestly, just long stretches of curves cutting through woods and farmland. It's usually a pretty quiet drive, and honestly, I've always kind of liked it for that reason. Like a built-in detox, where I have time to zone out to think about characters I met at the bar and interesting conversations I may have had with them. Not long into the drive, I remember thinking to myself how unusually foggy it was. I've driven those roads more times than I can count, but that night, visibility was worse than I'd seen in a while. I actually had to ease off the gas and take it slower because I could barely see more than a few car lengths ahead. Even flipping on me brights didn't help. It just made the fog glow and reflect back at me, almost like I was driving into a wall of white dot. It started pissing me off because I knew it would only add time to my trip, and I was exhausted. I was about halfway home when I noticed it. Through the fog, maybe a little off to the right side of the road, there was this faint yellow blinking light. At first, I figured it was just some kind of roadside marker or maybe reflector, but as I kept driving, it didn't really get any closer or farther away. It just stayed there, blinking at a steady rhythm, like it was moving right along with me, keeping pace from somewhere deeper in the fog. The whole thing felt a little off. I couldn't tell how far away it actually was. It was like the fog was playing tricks on my depth perception. After about another minute of driving with that blinking light hovering in the exact same place, I started getting this weird feeling in my stomach. I couldn't even explain it to you. Something about it just didn't sit right with me. I decided to slow down a bit, thinking maybe if I let off the gas, the light will keep going and I'd get a better sense of what it actually was. Or it would just continue onward and disappear entirely, and I wouldn't have to deal with it anymore. But as I eased down to almost a crawl, the light didn't change at all. It kept blinking at the same steady rhythm, still holding that same distance off to the side, like whatever it was that somehow matched my speed perfectly. That's when I really started to get spooked. I finally came to a full stop just to see if it would do the same, and sure enough, it stayed right there, blinking in the exact same spot with the same rhythm. I sat there for a second trying to figure out what the hell I was looking at and debating whether I should just turn around or keep going. That's when it changed. Their blinking didn't stop, but the light itself started getting brighter, like a small flame catching a sudden gust of wind and flaring up. It wasn't flashing faster. It was burning stronger with each pulse, like whatever it was had suddenly gotten more active. That was enough for me. I wasn't about to sit there and wait for whatever that was to get any closer or weirder. I reached on to shift into reverse so I could back up and turn round. But I realized that the engine wasn't running. I swear to God, it was dead silent. I had no idea how that was even possible. The only way to kill the engine would have been touching the key, but I distinctly remember never doing that. Why the hell would I do that at that point? My hands were shaking, and my hands never shake. I poured drinks all day. My hands can't shake. As I was desperately trying to start the car, I couldn't help but think that this thing outside my car had something to do with my engine, which of course wouldn't start. I tried the ignition again and again. The engine was completely dead. Meanwhile, that blinking yellow light kept burning brighter and brighter and brighter, almost like it was feeding on something. My pulse was racing at that point. I had no idea what the hell was going on, and there was no one around for miles. Not knowing what else to do, I reached for my phone, figuring maybe I could at least get some video of it or call for help. But as soon as I tapped screen, nothing happened. Complete teleblack. My phone had died. I knew for a fact I still had at least %. I had literally checked it back at the bar before I closed up. But now it was as dead as the engine. Before I could do anything else, the light suddenly flared to a blinding brightness like an exploding star. I physically couldn't keep my eyes open. That's how bright it was. I threw my arms up in front of me and kept my eyes shut for seconds, at least, feeling the blaze of what was now a gigantic light bulb, and then, just like that, it was gone. Like it had never been there in the first place. The fog was still thick, but there was nothing out there anymore. My heart was still pounding, but I instinctively reached for the ignition one more time. And this time, the engine turned over like normal. I didn't waste another second. I drove the rest of the way home with my eyes glued to the road, as if looking away for even a second would bring that awful light back. But nothing else happened that night. Nothing ever happened again. Actually, I've told this street to just about everyone I know. My family, friends, even a couple regulars at the bar. But no one's had an explanation that sits right with me, and trust me. I've heard every theory you could think of.